I don't want to let like how things are going in baseball affect the way I treat people.
Yeah.
You know.
What was sort of the conversation then about like recruiting versus potentially going to straight like into the draft? Like what was kind of like your mindset around that? What were the moments in your pro career so far that have been like, dude, I'm really here. Like this is like a pinch myself kind of moment.
So wanted to play in the majors right away, right?
Yeah.
But
just feeling ready?
To get there, you got to go through the minor leagues.
Right. Welcome to this episode of the Confidence Quotient podcast. My name is Michael Carrillo. Joined with me, co-host Zane Kaufman.
What's up?
Also joined here with me, big superstar.
Big leaguer.
Big time. The 2019 71st overall pick. Did I get that number right?
Yep.
In the MLB draft. Stanford alum. And also went to high school with me and Zane. Kyle Stowers. Welcome to the show, big dog.
Yep.
I'm excited to have you, dog.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, just back and freshly tan from your honeymoon.
Yeah.
Looking
tan.
It'll tan up.
Yeah. It'll bronze.
Yeah.
It'll bronze.
No, you'll be looking good.
Yeah.
It'll bronze. Well, dude, I mean, we wanted to just kind of jump straight into it, right? Me and Zane were talking about this. We're super excited to have you. I'm curious to know, outside of not playing high school football with me and Zane, what was your biggest regret in your career, dog?
No, sports-wise, that's definitely, I talk about that all the time. I think that along with not playing sophomore year of high school basketball. Just because, like, you don't get those years back, obviously, and you know. But yeah, football I wish I would have played in high school.
If you're listening and you can't see Kyle right now, Kyle's been the same size since about 6th grade. Dude looks a unit, bro.
Absolute unit.
So when I first came to our school, Kyle's a couple years younger than us, but I was like, dude, who is this senior, bro? And Kyle's like, yeah, I'm in 8th grade or whatever, whatever he was at the time. And so we played basketball together for a year. Which was a really fun experience, but then never got him to come out and play football, man. We were really, really hoping that he would. Obviously, we knew he was going to be a D1 athlete of some sort. He chose baseball, and I'm a little mad at you for it, but it's okay, dude.
And I was close to playing football every year.
Yeah.
You know, Beezer almost had me about every year.
Yeah, well, maybe later.
Gotta get those sales skills out there.
Yeah.
I know. Well, that was the first thing that I was like, okay, now I gotta learn how to persuade people.
Yeah.
Obviously, we gotta get people to do what we need them to do. So
Obviously.
Kyle, dude, we're really excited to have you on here, man. Really love to dive into, obviously, everything that you've got going on now. But obviously, we talk a lot about confidence here on this show. You have always been, or at least have always seemed to be like a really confident dude. Was that always the case for you in high school? I mean, obviously, like being such a physical freak relative to the other people that maybe you grew up with. Like, what was that kind of like mindset for you growing up?
I think in growing up, it was probably finding confidence in sports.
Yeah.
You know, I felt like everything I did, I was one of the better kids at the sport when we were, you know, even go back to elementary school. But I think in high school and throughout college and in the last few years, I've become more confident in who I am and what I stand for as a person and the way I treat people and, you know, how I connect with friends, family, loved ones. And so I think, you know, there's always been something to that, but I think it stems from probably, you know, sports.
Yeah. Did you know right away, like, or when did you know, hey, baseball's gonna be my deal?
You know what's funny is, and I don't, you know, I'm sure plenty of people have had this, you know, that have made it to the big leagues, but I just remember people saying even in like T-ball and after that, like, you know, you're gonna make it.
Jeez.
And
Wow.
Fast forward to like 7th, 8th grade, I actually took a year off of baseball right before high school, and thought I wanted to play basketball, and it didn't, you know, take me too long to realize which one I had a brighter future in. I'd say to really make it to the next level, I would say probably the second half of high school, junior, senior year.
Yeah. You know, it wasn't for a lack of trying in basketball, dude. This guy was a freak playing basketball.
He was a baller at basketball.
I think one of my favorite stories of you, I don't know if you remember this, but I think it might have been like my junior year and maybe your freshman year. We had a coach, and he was trying to get us to play just tougher and harder and all these sorts of things. And he was like, I don't know what he offered. He was like $10 or something.
$5.
$5 if you could draw a charge. So this dude, you drew like 2 charges or something.
I drew one, and it was hit my head a little bit.
Yeah,
and got pulled from the game.
Dude gets a concussion, bro, for $5.
Yeah.
But again, like that was who Kyle was, man. Is like as a freshman trying to make an impact and like hustling back on defense, draws the charge, but gets his head knocked into the hardwood.
Yeah, thankfully never got diagnosed with one, but was definitely dazed and went to the ER and left that night. But I don't think I ever got the $5 either. So I got to reach out to Coach Starr.
Yeah, there's something.
You know what, dude? He should have just played football, dude. At least he would have had a helmet.
I know.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I would have given him the $5 if we were playing football.
Wait, listen, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. So you decided to kind of like your junior senior year, you're gonna focus on baseball, and you obviously like started doing really well like pretty much right away. What was sort of the conversation then about like recruiting versus potentially going to straight like into the draft? Like what was kind of like your mindset around that?
Yeah. So my sophomore year, I both pitched and hit in all through college a little bit, and in high school, actually, everyone told me, even growing up, that I was going to pitch. And I kind of always use that as like a little, chip on my shoulder of like, oh, you think I'm going to do this? Like, no, like I'm going to hit. I'm going to be a position player. And early on, all my looks were for pitching. And then I think it was my sophomore summer going into my junior year, I was at some showcase at University of San Diego, and a bunch of colleges were there, and had a good day at the plate, good day on the mound, and so when Stanford saw me, the coach was Rusty Filter, and he was actually the first coach that said, "Oh, we see you more as an outfielder," and that was like the biggest turn. Like that was just, I was like, "Oh, I'm in." Like if you see that in me, then like know, and plus obviously Stanford from the academic side of things speaks for itself, and but it was always a baseball decision for me, and then the fact that was going to be the place where I got the opportunity to do both, but to be a position player first and keep hitting, that was huge for me.
So you felt like you desired more to be a position player and hit rather than pitch, because it didn't sound like you really even wanted to pitch almost.
No, I mean in the baseball world, if you're like bigger kid, throw hard, and you're left-handed, it's like, oh, you're gonna be a pitcher, because the old saying was, oh, the fastest way to the big leagues is being a left-handed pitcher, and I don't know. I think we all have a little bit in us of stubbornness of like when someone tells you something, you're like,
you're like, I don't need the easy way to get there.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna get there doing it the way that I want to do it, and playing the way that I want to play.
Yeah, and I just always enjoyed hitting more. So those two things are like, but still to this day, my buddy Tyler Nevin always, gives me grief because I find these like, little ways where I'm not really actually, being, I guess, given a tough spot or whatever, like where it's like pitching and I'm like, oh no, like people didn't think I could do it, or
it's so funny, dude. We talked about this before, but Bryce Young, obviously first overall draft pick for the Panthers. Before he got drafted, there's something that came out about him feeling like he had this chip on his shoulder, right? And it's funny because if you look at it, the dude was a 5-star quarterback in high school, went to the best college in
best high school,
best college.
Yeah.
And it's like, so what? But I think there's something to not manufacturing a chip on your shoulder, but there's got to be something that's driving you and pushing you. Is that what that kind of was for you?
Yeah, in high school for sure. I mean, I'm sure you guys watched the Michael Jordan Netflix documentary, like how he was just able to twist, any little thing that happened and then use it, as a motivator. And so I think there's really something to be said about that, because, in the dog days of whatever you're doing, your why is what's going to carry you, right? And that it looks like a number of different things, whether it's family, whether it's faith, no matter what it is, there's going to be days that are harder than others, and in those days, what's going to kind of give you that extra motivation.
Yeah, you got to find that little juice.
You got to find have you seen that piece that Tom Brady did?
Yeah.
He did with that. It was
almost
almost like
a podcast.
Yeah, it was almost like a podcast,
stage,
but it was like a stage.
Yeah.
And he's talking about that. He's like, I never had friends, on the other team. Like, I was trying to find anything I possibly could because anger was good for him.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk about like the GOAT mindset of like how you get into that, him and Jordan are like have the same exact mindset, and they think the same way about that. Like, what kind of edge can I mentally get myself into?
Mm-hmm. It's something that resonates with both those guys is taking it personally, right? Like if they get overlooked or if they feel like somebody's slighting them or looking at them in a certain way. Is that something that you find yourself doing, is taking those sort of things personally?
Yeah, I think like other in high school or college, like people that were more highly recruited than me, and obviously like I still got to where I wanted to be, but like people that I felt like were ahead of me, like, it wasn't in a way that I was ever rooting against those people,
Right.
but it was a motivator for me of like, no, like, I think I can get to you, and I think I can pass you too.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always kind of used, the people above me, and that's stemmed from me being a younger brother.
Yeah.
I had two older brothers, and they always let me, compete with their friends, and I think they didn't take it on easy on me, but they probably did a little bit when I was younger. But I always, even to this day, my brother's doing a great job in his career, and it's a motivator for me to push and be even better in mine, and it's fun. I think we go back and forth with it.
That's awesome.
And also, your two brothers are studs in their own right. I mean, those two guys are physically like gifted people, gifted athletes as well. You know what I mean? Like, yeah,
it's so different too. One of my brothers is a fighting instructor in Krav Maga.
Oh wow!
And then my other brother, played a little professional baseball overseas, and so
nice. That's dope, dude. So getting back then to like kind of your mindset around recruiting and deciding if you wanted to go straight to college or straight, entering into the draft. I know, like, so draft night comes. And you're kind of chilling and with some friends, you get the phone call that you're getting drafted.
Yeah.
And tell us what happened after that.
Yeah, so, I didn't really realize that I had a chance to sign until about March or April of my senior year.
Yeah.
Professionally. Like, it was always kind of like a little bit of just like a pipe dream, if you will. It's just like, I'll play professionally one day, and didn't think a good enough opportunity that a good enough opportunity would come. And I remember a scout came to my house because they do these in-home visits, and he's like, "Oh, where I see you, getting drafted, I don't think you'll have an issue with playing time in pro ball." And I was like, "Oh, like where, like I was like, where do you see it?" And he's like, "Oh, like I don't see you falling outside of the third round." And like from like then on, that was probably the most stressful 2-3 months after that of high school, because I was like, the first time in my life I had to make a decision for myself as an 18-year-old, and I knew, you don't fully appreciate it at the time, but like I knew it was like a life decision.
Yeah.
And fast forward to like the first round, I remember like, I knew like that night wasn't going to be, the draft is in 3 different days, so you do like the first, second round on the first night, or I don't know how it is now, but that's how it used to be. And then like 3 through 10, and then 11 through 40 after that. Now there's, I think, only 20 rounds, so I had hung out with a couple buddies. One of them stayed the night. For day 2, I set my alarm just in case. I didn't think anything was going to happen.
Yeah.
I get a call from my agent. It was like 9 in the morning, and she goes, "Hey, these teams are calling. They want to know if you want to play." And I remember just woken up.
Yeah.
Running downstairs, I go in my mom's garage, and it was like this weird, like, even looking back on it, kind of an out-of-body experience looking back at it now, because I'm like, I have what feels like 5 minutes to make, a life decision. And I never felt prepped because I didn't know. And the thing that kind of always stuck with me was that everyone said, if you're not ready to play, go to school. Like, if there's any bit of doubt, go to school. And I called her back, and I go, I just don't know. And so I just think my gut is telling me to go to school, because I just don't know if I'm ready. And, I actually went back in the house. My mom goes, "Who is that?" And I go, "It's Lonnie. She said these teams were calling." I told her no. And my mom was like, "Call her back right now."
You're like, "Mom, that's not how this works, Mom. Mom, that's not how this works." Yeah.
And she ended up being supportive of it, and gratefully I, made it to where I hoped I'd make it then. But there's a little bit of that at that time. You want you want to hedge sometimes. You want to hedge yourself, and
So going into draft day, were you already committed to Stanford?
Yeah, so I committed it was my junior fall.
Gotcha.
And it's verbal, and then you sign, in the fall or winter of your senior year. But, yeah.
So the deciding factor for you deciding to go to Stanford versus getting drafted right out was just a lack of certainty that you wanted to play in the majors right away.
But yeah, wanted to play in the majors right away, right? But
just feeling ready?
To get there, you got to go through the minor leagues.
Right.
And, out of high school, it's really good for someone if they make it in, 4 or 5 years,
Right.
Yeah. in college it's like 3 or 4, obviously guys a little more polished. And so everything I'd heard about the minor league lifestyle, it's nothing glamorous. And it's gotten a lot better since I came out of college. Like during my time is when it started to get better, which I was fortunate. But that's what kind of stuck with me is like, do I really want to, be, 18 years old in Florida, rookie ball, with, a bunch of like Latins who speak only Spanish and like just like, coming from a school of 400 people, like Stanford felt like a big enough transition. I don't know. I mean, I'd like to believe obviously that whatever route I would have gone, that I would have been where I'm at now, but grateful to say that I am here.
Yeah. So you pull up at Stanford. I mean, and you mentioned this, like we went to a really small high school. We had 400 kids and half of them were international kids. And like, we just went to a small school. So what was that transition like going from a small school to a larger school? And then the other thing too is, you'd gone through some pretty tragic and serious things in high school, with someone that was close to you, and kind of like how did that put a lot of things into perspective for you?
Yeah, I guess I didn't mention it as I was talking about my senior year. Obviously, you guys knew him, but one of my best friends, Jason Lyon, passed away with brain cancer our senior year of high school in the fall. And, as you guys know, like the Christian high community, obviously there's, pros and cons to the high school we went to, but like it's a tight-knit community. And I went to it kindergarten through 12th grade, 13 years, same campus, guys like Brandon Hester, who I went to school with my whole life, and so to go from that to not having those people that just know you, they know your family, they know, like my parents, I grew up with a divorced home, so like they knew that people knew that and they understood, that. And when I went to college, I had a really tough time not having that same community. And obviously, as you know, those relationships just take time. And so it was a challenge for me, and especially with everything that had happened with Jason, something that was such a big, huge thing in my life and something that really bonded me with the guys I was close to in my class. And then like you leave that and that was really hard for me. And freshman year as a whole, like you said, it's just a culture shock. And Stanford's a small college. It's only 6,000 people, but that in comparison to Christian is a big deal. Never spending time away from home. That was more than like 2 weeks for travel baseball. And so freshman year as a whole was really challenging. It was the first time I ever struggled with baseball. And so, all these things, I remember like in the fall, like texting my dad being like, I want to go home. Like, I don't want to be here. And I remember something that he said, like, and it's so simple, and I still like think about it today. It's like, he's like, it's gonna be okay. You know what I mean? Like, and at the time, I'm like, no, like, screw you. Like, you don't know that. And he was right, obviously. And like, so like when I go through, and I still, in my freshman year, dealing with that adversity, when things don't go well, I just think like, it's gonna be okay, and not to get too overly reactive to, certain moments,
How'd you start to kind of get your way out of that, like, woe is me, like, this is tough, this is hard, I want to go home, to like, okay, I'm good, I'm fine, I just gotta keep putting my head down and working? Like, what did that kind of transition look like for you?
The season was really fun, even though like I started opening day and then played myself out of a spot, and we had a really deep team, and so basically just whoever got hot first was going to win the job. I wasn't that guy. So like that kind of started the hunger, like, and I remember so every summer after the college season, you go play summer ball, and I remember I need to get home. I can't go play summer ball. But I had like this like little epiphany, and I want to say it was when we were playing like UCLA in like April or May, and I was just thinking to myself like, no, I want to go play summer ball. Like I miss playing, and so like I kind of refound my enjoyment of the game, playing every day, not worried about performance affecting whether I was going to play the next day or not. And like I look back to that time in Bellingham, Washington, as like kind of where I refound, my belief in my ability of being a baseball player.
I think that's one of the hardest transitions, is going to a big-time school like Stanford, a big-time baseball program like that, and you go from playing in high school with your buddies and this is fun to now this is your job and it's a business, and your performance is very, very scrutinized, and like you said, like a lot of people tie their self-worth to your performance at that point, because it's hard not to. It really is.
Yeah.
Because it's like, hey, I did well today. Everybody loves me. You're getting the high fives. You're getting the slap on the back. The coaches are like more friendly to you. It feels like. Yeah. And then the next day you don't do as well. You go for 4. You pop out, and then you're like, do these guys even like me? Like, was there like, how do you get yourself through that?
Yeah, college is like, and now I know it's different with the NIL, but it's like the weirdest thing, because you're right, it is a profession, like it's almost like a job.
Yeah, I mean, these grown men are relying on your performance for their job.
Yeah. And so it's the weirdest thing is like they want you to care as much as they do, and some guys that don't, some guys at Stanford like played there because they got a Stanford degree.
Yeah.
And so like it's the most unique pull, but I was very fortunate. We had a coaching change in my sophomore year, and I actually started my sophomore year off very similarly. Struggled early, and we had a coach, his name was Tommy Nicholson, who is he's the head coach at UC Davis now. And he said, he texted me, and I won this award, that award, called Helen Keller Player of the Week. I went.
It's brutal.
I went 1 for 12 with like 8 strikeouts in a weekend.
Is that a Stanford award, or is that?
No, it's like a college baseball like parody account. It's called Foul Pole Sports. I remember seeing it. I was so embarrassed. Like I was like embarrassed to go to the field the next day. Like I remember thinking, funny enough, at that time, like, oh, I should just pitch because I was throwing the ball well. And our coach texted me. He goes, hey, you want to come get some early work in? And I remember thinking, no. Like, I don't want to go to the field anymore. I just want to be away. And I go, sure. And, we show up to hit. And he goes, hey, you got another 150 at-bats coming. You go, we're going to keep rolling with you. So, you're going to get through this. And, like, it was like that moment. That was a huge transition for me. And because, like, it was like, oh, like, I'm going to keep playing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to put so much pressure on this next at bat or this next game, and the first game we were playing Michigan, and we had a rain delay, and that rain delay weirdly helped a ton, because I struggled a lot with like the performance anxiety in college, a lot more so than I do now, and I was so nervous, and I remember we had a rain delay, and it was like the perfect thing for me, because it was like, oh, are we gonna play tonight? Are we not? Oh, you guys, game in 30 minutes. I was like, okay, let's go get ready. And our head coach, David Esker, gave me a hit and run. So it just made it super easy. It's like, just swing. Swing at the first pitch that comes. I got a base hit, and as simple as it. I mean, this kind of the rest was history for my college career. And that point, like, I got going right after that.
I mean, you kind of balled out your sophomore year. What was it, like 59 hits or something like that?
Yeah.
10 homers. I mean, you were balling, baby.
Yeah, and I think I finished like 1 for 18, and that, that's just another week of pro ball at bats. But like, 1 for 18 to finish college season was a difference in me in 300 versus 280. But yeah.
That's awesome.
I think the other layer to that thing, because you said something in there where your coach came to you and said, hey, you still got 150 hits. Mm-hmm. And I think that for a lot of high school players that are going to go play at the next level in college, there is a lot of pressure to perform. And when you're in high school, it's like, there's only so many guys at the high school, right? Like, when you're the guy, you're the guy. Mm-hmm. And you know that even if I mess up here, I'm still going to play the next week. Yeah. I'm still going to get my at-bats. When you get to that next level, I feel like that uneasiness of like, hey, am I going to continue to play?
Yeah.
Plays a huge factor mentally. And that coach saying that, realistically probably gets you into where you are now just by saying that one sentence.
Oh, 100%. I mean, like I said, like the year before I got pulled from the starting job. If I get pulled again from the starting job, who knows what happens. And I consider myself so grateful for the people that I've had in my lives along the way. That coach I had, the head coach I had, I literally just saw him recently, and I tell him the older I get, the smarter you get. Because there's so many little isms he had that I still think about, and I still talk about, and whether it's been my friends, the coaches I've had around me, my agents, Lonnie Murray and Dave Stewart, I've had such a good support group along the way, and like the saying, like it takes a village, and I truly do feel like, there's so many people I owe a lot to.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're starting to ball out now. Your sophomore year. When is the MLB like popping up on your radar again?
Yeah, I remember the end of our sophomore year, we ended up, that was our best team we had in college, and we had a couple injuries right before the end of the year that I think was the difference of us being, competing for a national championship, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But we watched the draft for the 2018 MLB draft, and our shortstop, Nico Harder, who's with the Cubs, just won a Gold Glove. He got drafted in the first round, and we were there for a draft party.
Wow.
And we had a couple other guys that went that day too. And I just remember being like, I want that.
Yeah.
I want that. And what those guys did the year before is they went to the Cape Cod College League, and they balled out, and that really helped them, and they had good junior years, and I had a really good summer in the Cape. Kind of as well, like my first 18 at bats, they were pretty poor.
Yeah.
Kind of a theme in my career, and then just kind of clicked and kind of really started to believe every game we were with the best players in the country. I'm the best player on this field. Yeah. Every time we step out, I believe that,
yeah.
and I'd say that summer was okay, I'm gonna play at the next level.
That's awesome. What do you think that theme is for you? Of it takes maybe 17 or 18 at bats for you to kind of believe that okay, dude, I'm gonna be fine. I'm gonna get I'm gonna do what I gotta do. What do you think that is?
Yeah, I think a number of things. I think the main thing, part of it is hitting generally starts slow in baseball because it's such a rhythm thing, and you got to do it every day to feel comfortable in the box. But I'd say another thing is, like I said, going to K through 12, the same school, same people.
Yeah.
And so when I get in a new environment, I think sometimes, and I've gotten a lot better at it. But like I said, college is pulling teeth out, trying to get comfortable, and pro ball is a little bit better, but still same type of thing. And so I think that it stems a little bit from that. And I feel like once it's a career now, right? But in college, there's still a little bit of the person, right? And you want to feel like people care about you as an individual, as much as they do about what you do on the field. And so once I feel like I get a group of people, friends, relationships with the coaches, and I feel settled in, I feel like that really helps me.
Yeah.
Again, it's just, it takes away a little bit from, if I, don't perform, are these guys going to still care about me or whatever?
Yeah. Yeah. Baseball is probably one of the most mental sports ever. I had an offensive coordinator when I was in college that he was an offensive coordinator and a ton of he was a coordinator for 40 years. He coached Auburn and Michigan with Denard Robinson, just a whole bunch of things. And he was quarterback is the second hardest position in sports. The first is being a baseball player or a pitcher. I was like, dude, what? You're supposed to be on our side, bro. What are you talking about? But he would tell us all the time, it's the mental side of things, right? That's really the only sport where if you go up and you hit a ball 3 times out of 10, you're a winner.
You're a Hall of Famer.
You're phenomenal, right? So you deal with so much failure in baseball that you have to be able to overcome that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some things that I want you to just think about maybe what's been in college, right? What was your worst performance versus your best performance, and was there any difference kind of in your mindset going into either of those?
Carefree, not careless. And so I think that's kind of, it's a confidence thing, and I think that's a lot of things too. Golf, I'm sure same thing as being a quarterback, trusting your instinct, trusting. I would say that obviously the tough thing about baseball is you do it every day, and the majority of days, you're not going to feel 100%, and so it's can you trick yourself to find a way to get put your best foot forward even on days you're not feeling good, and I think I would just say it's 60% of the time you don't feel great, or you feel kind of this average, and then 20% of the time you feel really good, and 20 you feel really bad, and so on those days where it's not good, how can you find a way to be ready to go? And sometimes it's mentally as much as it is physically, you're traveling, it's 162 games and less than 200 days, so it's you're getting, only a few off days a month, and so it's you're showing up to the field, you're doing it every single day, and away from home. For me, whether it's in Baltimore or Norfolk with the big league team, or in AAA with Norfolk, and it's far away from San Diego, don't have any family out there usually, just for visits every now and then, and so all that stuff plays a factor too, and I think with with baseball, some days you hit balls hard right at guys and you're out, and other days you don't hit it well and you get a base hit. So all that stuff plays a factor. That and, the pitcher you're facing is trying to, look at your scouting report and look exactly what, you don't do well.
Yeah.
And that's what they're trying to pick your weaknesses. I'm still young in my career, but like when I rehabbed for my shoulder in high A this past year, I remember a guy just being like, "Oh man, he keeps throwing me all these off-speed pitches. He's not throwing me any fastballs." And I go, "The higher up you get, if you don't hit that pitch well, that's what they're gonna throw."
Yeah, 100%.
So, it's all like that, and sometimes things are falling your way, and sometimes they're not.
What's the difference between carefree and careless for you? I like what you said about that.
Yeah, I think there's no valor in indifference. I don't think there's any, like, oh, I don't care. I feel like that's a defensive thing that we all do, and especially a lot for me in high school and college. It's like, if I don't try too hard and then I fail, then I have that excuse of, I didn't really I didn't really care. Like, I wasn't trying. Then you can care too much, right, where you're putting more pressure on yourself. You're tight, you're tense, and when you're tense, you're not reacting the same way, you're probably thinking more. And so I think carefree is just, again, it's a confidence thing. It's a belief for me that, I believe in my ability, to do this activity or to perform. But if I don't, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's what it is.
It's being secure in your identity outside of being a baseball player.
100%.
Yeah. And being just present too, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think a lot of the performance anxiety stuff or caring too much comes with not being where your feet are.
Yeah.
If you're just there and present and you're like just focused on executing or seeing the pitch or doing what you're supposed to be doing, rotating the right spots, like if you're just so focused on the execution and not worried about the ramifications of you. What happens if I swing and you're thinking about these things and you're caring too much or like you just tie so much of your identity into that at bat.
Yeah.
It's hard to do.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, whether who's there at the game watching, families in town that week, or the spectacle of the big leagues, like having 30,000 people there, at any given night, and knowing that like if something happens, it's gonna be on MLB Network, and so like learning how to and that's part of it. Everyone does it, right? Or to have success, you gotta be able to handle it, and so. That's part of it too, is the spectacle of it all, and trying to just get back to the act of how I think of it. It's just processing the baseball. It's yes, like you're working on your swing and you're working on stuff, but like for me, it's like at the end of the day, like am I processing the baseball or am I like making decisions too quick? And so
I mean, that's something that people can apply to their everyday life, right? Like just outside of baseball, but. I mean, you talk about like handling this success, and we're going to talk about a little bit more like your pro story and some of the cool things that you've been able to do so far. But how do you handle that success without like drinking your own Kool-Aid or thinking that you're all that? And because that's a really hard thing to do.
Yeah, learned about it or how to do it better in professional baseball. College, it's a lot harder because easier and harder, but like you play 4 times a week.
Yeah.
You play Tuesdays and you play Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So. If you have a good series, you got essentially, 3-4 days to kind of sit on that.
Yeah.
And in professional baseball, whether I go 0 for 4 or 4 for 4, I'm showing up the next day and I got to do it again. And so it's gotten a lot easier, good or bad. I try to process it the same. I get back to the apartment I'm living at and I, throw on a TV show and I, decompress for the night and I, move on to, the next day.
Yeah.
And it's just, trying to be less emotional about the good or the bad.
I'm so glad he didn't stay like ice bath or something.
I do that too, yeah.
I had the feeling. I thought that's what you were going to say.
Yeah.
Like,
this guy's he's a big red light recovery guy.
Not doing the red light, but I love contrast therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sauna guy?
I love saunas, yeah.
Well, listen, bro, we're all big sauna guys.
Yeah.
Big sauna guys. I love a good sauna.
Oh, it's the best. Yeah. So, I mean, but that's part of it too, though. Is like I've after games, some guys rush out of there, and I take my time. I eat there. In Norfolk, there's an office in the clubhouse that I'll go sit and watch TV in, and the big leagues, I'll go hit the tubs, hit the sauna, because when I leave, and how I think of it, when I take my shower for the night after the game, like I'm kind of washing off the day too.
Nice.
And so like I don't want to leave with charge in me from the field, because then I'm processing it at the apartment.
Right.
And so like trying to best separate everything.
flesh all that stuff out.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, the other thing I want to know too, man, is because this is applicable for baseball just like it is for life. People that they're chasing something, right? They're going after a goal. There is a routine and there's a mundane routine that comes with that, right? And you're playing 162 baseball games a year. There's a lot of things that are just routine, mundane, like repetitive, boring. How do you get yourself psyched up every day to get out there, to be excited, to run around like a little kid? You know, like how do you get yourself into that mindset every day of, okay, this is new today. Like I got to just take today and grab it by the horns. Like how do you do that?
Yeah, I think a couple different things. I think in the big leagues it's a little bit easier to do that just because of the crowds you're playing.
Yeah, the environment.
You know, you're playing against the best in the world, you know, especially for me being early in my career, you know, like the first time I faced Justin Verlander, and I'm like, man, like I watched him, you know, pitch for a while. And, but I would say the other side of it from like off the field is like I've truly learned to fall in love with the little things. Like, and like what I mean by that is like I really do look forward to like, oh, like I'm gonna go, you know, watch my TV show when I get back, like, you know, whatever it is, you know, and then, or like, you know, whether it's like you have a day game and it's like, oh, we're gonna go get a dinner with, you know, the guys, and like this will be great, you know, or like on the road, like let's go get some coffee in the morning, and just like little moments like that, you know, where it's like I've learned to like be so appreciative of those moments.
Yeah.
And then also just to learn to fall in love with the routine. I do love structure, you know, like I do love having a good sleep schedule, and so I think just trying to find, you know, the things to be appreciative of rather than, you know, being like, oh, I have to get ready to play again today, you know.
Yeah.
But like I said, in the big leagues, it's a little bit easier to get yourself up for games because they mean so much, you know, to an entire fan base, to, you know, you just see sports fans in general, like, and so, you know, those are a little bit easier to get up for.
How was it playing in front of the Oriole fan base?
Man,
a pretty lively crowd, or?
Yeah, and I you know, I'm bummed. I didn't finish up in the big leagues this last year, so I didn't get the full taste of like the, you know, the playoff, you know, Orioles fans. But I mean, even we were in the race when I first got called up in 2022, and we were playing the Red Sox on a weekend, and you know, it was pretty full. And I remember talking to my brother after and being like, "This is what you dreamed about. Like, this is it." And you know, it's awesome. It's a great fan base. You know, being around Baltimore for breakfast or whatever, and people coming up to you or when you're at the grocery store and being like, "Hey, like thank you so much for what you're doing for the city." And so I can only imagine for the guys this year, towards the end, how cool it was for them to be a part of that.
That's dope. So I want to talk about that though. Is you getting now like your debut into the majors? You had a lot of really cool stuff happen. I mean, talk us through some of that.
Talk us through the day, dude. Because I feel like that coming from where we were at, you know, here and knowing everyone. I'm seeing every single story I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Is like of you, and I'm just thinking like, dude, that is so cool. I wonder what was going through his mind.
It was super unique, and my debut versus when I got called up are two different things for me, because I debuted in June because one of our players wasn't vaccinated, and they were playing in Toronto. So they basically have this rule where you can come as a replacement player, and so like you can get put on the roster temporarily and get taken off right when the series is over. And so I remember I was tipped off about like a week or so before. I was getting these texts from people in the front office being like, "Hey, do you have your passport with you?"
Yeah.
And I like looked at the schedule, and I was playing really well at the time, so I was like thinking like, oh, like, I'm gonna be getting called up soon.
Yeah.
And I see it, you know, a week away, I see Toronto, and I'm like, okay. And then it was like this little back and forth of like, okay, you might be going just on what's called a taxi squad as like a just in case, or you know, we don't know if you're gonna get activated or not. And but yeah, it turned out I ended up getting activated, and I found out kind of the night before or 2 nights before. Night before I traveled there, where I heard, you know, you probably should have your family out there. And so like that night, like, you know, we just finished a game, you know I have a morning flight, but I'm on the phone with, you know, my now wife, who was my fiance at the time, Emma, you know, my mom, my dad unfortunately couldn't make it out because he wasn't vaccinated at the time. And so I'm like on the phone trying to schedule, like, get their plans. My agent's helping me out, trying to, you know, coordinate for them to make it. And traveled to Kansas City to meet the team, to fly to Toronto, and that night I got a call from the manager, and he said, "Hey, you're in there tomorrow. Like you're gonna debut." And
how much did you not sleep that night?
So I slept less the night before when I knew like it was gonna be happening.
Yeah.
I was so tired that I slept pretty well the next night, and the whole day leading up to the debut, all I thought about was my breathing, and I was just like like trying to like slow things down, like just stay calm, take deep breaths, and almost to a fault, because I felt like it took me 2 or 3 at bats to get into compete mode. Like, I was just like trying to like, not be nervous,
right,
rather than using that energy, for enhanced focus, essentially. And that's one of the things you learn about in sports psychology or mental skills training, is like how to perceive those different feelings, those physiological reactions, and use them as an enhancement. And I certainly did not do that, but I was calm.
You're up there like just so zen,
yeah. And then
carefree, not care less.
Yeah. But it was a wild day. I felt like I like lost a few pounds that week, and then like I once I got my first hit, I felt like I could breathe.
Yeah.
That was like the first moment where I was like a genuine breath of fresh air, rather than these manufactured deep breathing techniques. And probably one of the coolest parts was certainly the support from you guys and from family, friends, people I barely knew, or that you cross paths with once, and like I said, my dad and my brother couldn't make it to the debut, but there was this video that I have, and it's one of my favorite videos. It's of my brother at their house, and I think it's one of my buddies filming my brother, and when I get my first hit, the way he reacted, like it was like he did it, and like that's what's special to me, because like I don't feel like I do what I do just for my enjoyment or for my I feel like I want to make the people around me proud, and I want to be someone that people look at and go like, I know him. And so maybe that is inherently like it's my own way of thinking about it, but like.
No, but it is a selfish thing, man. Like you're trying to you want other people involved. Like you're trying to take all these people with you in this experience, which is so cool and so unique and something to be really proud of. I think one of my favorite clips from your first hit, when they showed it on TV, was like it just pans straight to your mom and like, fiance, and it just like they're all like hugging and screaming, and it's just such a cool, wholesome like sports moment. Of like, dude, you've been through a lot at that point to get that opportunity, and didn't stop there. I mean, like you ended up. Obviously you still getting more opportunities there in the majors. Got your first home run.
Yeah, that was a wild experience.
That was an awesome. I mean, so kind of set the scene for us.
This one is probably better because I had gotten called up as I would like actually added to the roster officially on the Friday, and I got I wake up to my strength coach knocking on my door, and I look at him. He goes, "Hey, like call Buck, our manager in AAA." And I look at my phone, I got like a bunch of missed calls, and he goes, "Hey, you're flying out to Baltimore," like, and it was, that was like, oh, like, should I pack for a week? Should I pack for the rest of the year? And so I remember that time though, like just really being like, just go play, like, just go compete. And that was the weekend I was referring to when we played the Red Sox. Had a really good first night, and then fast forward to we played them on Sunday in the Little League Classic, and so we fly early in the morning on that Sunday to go to Williamsport. We're getting to experience like what they're doing that day. Sliding down on the cardboard down the hill. Watching a little bit of the games. It was an early morning and a long day, and it was raining, so we didn't end up taking BP. Didn't get any ground balls outside, and I was bad. I don't know when I was bad, but I was playing left that night. And it was on ESPN, like Sunday Night Baseball, and I went 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts. and I was just like, oh man, like knowing, and like I'm getting texts of pictures after of like people like haven't watched me on this, on like their TV and ESPN, and like talk about like learning how to silence out like the outside noise, and like baseball being like a very tough mental thing. I was just like, man, like that, like 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts is like about as bad as a day as it gets. They call it the golden sombrero, and so that's setting the scene because we go back home to play the White Sox. And had a couple bad games in a row. Like it didn't get much better, and then hit a ball hard like my third at bat of either game 1 or game 2 of that series, and that kind of like got like some barrel out of the way. I like finally squared up a ball, and actually I think it was the third game of the series because we traveled the next day. But we're down 1 Liam Hendricks comes in, who's one of the best closers in the game, has a really cool story. I don't know if you guys heard, cancer survivor, they could come back, probably gonna be, I don't know if he already won it or not, but comeback player of the year.
Yeah.
But last year, this was before all this happened, but I hit a first pitch, fastball, pop up to left.
Yeah.
And the guy, kind of misplays it.
Yeah.
And
he drops it.
Yeah.
He didn't make a play.
Yeah. And, so I get another life from 0-2 count. And, what's funny about it is, like, it's an out-of-body experience. Like, I remember it, like, kind of more so from, like, the video clip than I actually do, like, living it. I remember the feelings, though, very vividly. And got an 0-2 curveball, caught middle of the plate, and knew I hit it well, and I just remember, like, seeing the ball go over the fence, and, like, just everything just went, like, silent. Like don't remember the noise.
Yeah.
And like, you see the video, I'm, like, sprinting, I'm, like, fist pumping, and people are, like, talking about the reaction, and I was just, like, blacked out.
Yeah.
And it was a special moment, though, because, and I feel like I have, like, 3 or 4 of those moments, in my career, where, like, right before these, like, all-time moments of my career, I can, pivot back to, like, just a moment right before that of feeling very low. And so, like, when you have those moments come after such a low, it feels so much better. And now it's like, I'm like, kind of like, I've tricked myself now to, like, I always say, like I feel so alive after a bad game.
You know what's coming.
Like, I feel so alive after a bad game because, like, bad games are hard, they hurt. But like I feel it. And so, like, I get kind of excited now when, like, things aren't going well, because, like, I just know that, like, when you get through those moments, those are the moments that I still talk about today, right? Like, we're talking about it right now, and, like, that moment doesn't mean as much if things aren't going if things aren't going poorly right before it.
Right. That's awesome.
Dude, so you have success, right? And then obviously you go and you get hurt, right? I think it was your shoulder, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Get hurt, rehab that, and correct me if this time.
Yeah.
You're getting all the way through there, and I think that your shoulders back, you're getting ready to, like, go back into the big leagues, right? You're, like, playing a couple AAA, some AAA ball, and then you get smoked, right? You're having all this success. You go through, a really lengthy recovery, and right at the tipping point, it
kind of gets reset.
Kind of gets all taken away.
Yeah.
What is your mindset through that whole thing, dude? And where are you at now?
Yeah. I don't know what would have happened as far as, like, whether I would have gotten called back up or not. Obviously the roster situations are out of my control, and was definitely starting to get going after the injury, and started to play some really good baseball, and it's one of those moments in my career that is something I'll never forget, because the timing of it was kind of right around when rosters expanded, so there was some optimism of maybe I get called back up, and so, like, there was some emotion of that, like oh man, like I missed 8 weeks to an injury, finally get back to being comfortable, and then, like, something like that happens, and kind of like a when it rains it pours type of thing. But again, like, kind of one of those moments that, like, when I came back from getting hit in the face by a pitch, like, the first pitch I saw when I got back, I hit a double. And so it's like I didn't kind of finish the year where I wanted to be. Obviously every baseball player wants to play in the big leagues. I finished the year in AAA, but, like, I'm so proud of the way that I handled all those moments, and the way that I like, getting hit in the face, getting back on the box, getting back in the box as quick as I did, and putting together some decent numbers in the season, given the circumstances, and I think it's one of those things, like, my wife Emma told me, she goes, like, I'm just appreciate how pleasant you were during that, and so, like, for her, who I talk to every day, she visits me about once a month, like for her to say that, like, to me, that's, like, a huge compliment, because, like, I don't want to let, like, how things are going in baseball affect the way I treat people, and so I'm super proud of the way I handled it, and I just, like I said, and kind of leading up, I just become a big believer in in myself, and I don't mean this as like a way to like I don't like the, oh, I'm the man, like I just, you know, believe in who I am and what I stand for, and so I was just proud of the way that, you know, I was able to handle such tough circumstances this year.
Yeah.
I mean, watching that video, bro, that's like the reason I don't play baseball.
Getting pelted. Yeah.
The thing I remember was, I don't need to be too graphic, but like the image is like all the blood, like it felt like someone turned on a faucet of blood, and I was just like that's the image that's stuck in my mind. But thankfully, I mean, super fortunate, like to come away with only a broken nose and a couple stitches, like of all things considered. So
yeah, no, you know, I think what's really cool about that too is, and we were talking about this a little bit before this, but like getting back in the box, right? Like getting back in the box after all of that, not being afraid of that next pitch, swinging, getting a double. What are some of the things now that you're thinking about? Like, is there any lingering sense of like, oh gosh, like, you know, we were talking about this too, like, you know, people that tear their ACLs, they come back and you can tell they're running timid. How do you get yourself out of like any sense of timidity or, gosh, I don't want to get hit in the face again? Like, is that in the back of your mind at all?
So I think like it was something that was still being worked through a little bit towards the end of the year, and it got just better each at bat, and you just like, you know, it's like a little, I guess, checkpoints throughout a rehab process of any other injury. You know, you're just like trying to slowly implement, you know, increased stimuli of like, you know, that type of those circumstances. And I did a lot of, like I said, sports psychology with a therapist this year, which was one of the probably the biggest advancement I had in my game this year was the mental side of things. And you know, I worked with a couple different ones who, you know, who are in the Navy. Nice. And so like, you know, for me, the step one was like, okay, well, they're dealing with people who like are actually putting their like life on the line.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was like, okay, like
puts it in perspective a little.
Puts it in perspective a little bit, exactly. And then, you know, from there it was okay, like how can we, you know, like what level do you like to play at, like stimulation wise, out of 10? Yeah. And it's like, okay, like in preparation leading up to getting back on the field, like let's, you know, get yourself to that type of, you know, level. Yeah. You know, and so like if you're feeling like when I first like let's say it's like a righty BP thrower, you know, that's a little bit easier for me to get back in. But then we have a lefty BP thrower that comes in and it's like, yeah, like it's not the game like thing, but it's still, you know, a step up towards that. And so like just being able to like take control of the situation, you know, and incrementally build back up to it was super helpful. And then you know, from there it's just, you know, freak accent type of thing, you know, like I wasn't around another person who got hit in the face that year. You know, you see guys get hit on the helmet a couple times, but like hit in the face. So it's like, you know, it's kind of one of those low probability events too. Yeah. And stuff like that, just reminding, you know, myself of that. And, you know, like finished pretty strong though, you know. Yeah. It was a lot of intentional work to get there. Yeah.
Yeah. I love sports psychology, that stuff. Yeah. Like, I read a ton of stuff about that all the time, and performance, you know, psychology and all that kind of stuff. You talked a little bit about that scale of like playing, you know, from like almost stimuli level 1 to 10. What was that number for you? And then did that change based on the game or based on who you were facing or any of those things?
Yeah, I feel like for me, I want to say it's like sub 5. I think when
so pretty low.
Yeah, I'd say like, and it's like what you like to perform at. Yeah. It's like what you feel like your peak performance is at. And I think when I'm less, I guess, emotional or less revved up, you know, I think that my decisions in the batter's box are a lot better. Yeah. You know, swinging at the right pitches and stuff like that. So for me, that's the level I like to play at. Yeah. But I think with the training leading back up to it, you know, it was like maybe go a little bit higher and, you know, be able to get back to that, you know, 4 or 5. But yeah.
Yeah, that I think that's such an important thing for, I mean, all of us to think about, like, what level do you perform well at? I know some people that they play at like a 9 or a 10, and for them, that heightened level of stimulus and just like almost, it almost feels tight, but they're like, they perform best when they're almost just like clenching their butt cheeks a little bit, you know?
It's like, you watched that quarterback show with Pat Mahomes. Yeah. And he gets into that little squabble with Max Crosby, and he talks about, dude, I just blacked out. Yeah. You know, you woke up the rum and fucking read all this. Yeah. But if you look, dude, from where he was previously to where he really performed at a high level, it was a completely different Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
He was making the throws. escaping the pocket, not getting tackled. It was a completely different person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it goes in what you were saying is waking up that competitor mode in you.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Because before that, you're thinking about, and I used to face this all the time as a quarterback, like those first couple like series you go out there, you're thinking about like having perfect footwork and making sure I see this perfectly. And it's like, when you get to the place where maybe you get hit in the face a little bit, or like, I get sacked or whatever the case is, then that just like primal almost competitor reaction comes out of like, okay, forget all that stuff, bro. Let me just play ball.
Just go play.
Just go play ball.
Yeah. I think the important thing is, I think for people who, I guess, I haven't done a lot of the sports psychology stuff that I've learned, is just paying attention. Like, and that's like, baseball is a little bit easier to do that because you play every day, right? So it's like you have more opportunity to learn about yourself. You have more opportunity to see like what works for me and what doesn't. And I think, for anyone out there who maybe hasn't excelled in that part of the game, the biggest thing is just paying attention.
Yeah.
And it's like being noticing certain habits you have and how that affects your performance.
Yeah.
And trying things, and some things work and some things don't.
Yeah, and that number can be fluid, right?
Yeah.
Like, as I think back when I was playing, like in high school, I probably played at like a 9 or a 10. I was just tight, but I felt like you didn't almost enjoy it because you're just so like, you want to be perfect. And we actually had a sports psychologist come in my senior year at San Jose State, and we talked a lot about like, what number do you feel comfortable at?
Yeah.
And so a lot of that goes into like, what music are you listening to before the game? When I started like really thinking about stuff in college and getting more comfortable, I probably went from like a 9 to like a 5.
Yeah.
And I would listen to like Hall and Oates and just like 90s R&B before a game, because in college too, and I'm sure in baseball, like those games are long.
Yeah.
You can't get too psyched up early, or else you're gonna like burn yourself out, right?
100%. And for me, like if I'm overly psyched up about the beginning of a game and I have a bad first at bat, like do I react more harshly to it? Like I want to be in a little bit more of a controlled emotional state where if things don't go well, or if things go well at the beginning, like I can stay at a kind of flat line.
Yeah. What were some of the other like impactful breakthroughs that you had dealing with a sports psychologist?
I'd say one of the big things for me was learning how to let go. And when I say like let go, and I've alluded to it, is like all the outside stuff, like I mentioned how like I want to be, make my family proud, make my loved ones proud, make my friends proud. And sometimes that can be a performance enhancer when, you're answering your why, and sometimes that can be, an added weight. And so like just learning, to let go of, the things that I, use as added pressures, because, like, in baseball right now, a lot of guys, are playing for money, right? And I think that when, you think about, oh man, like I want to play well so I can make more money, it gets a little bit harder to hit a baseball, ball well. You know, if hitting a ball is the difference of you, making your livelihood or not. And it's true, like for me, and it's true for everyone, right? And some guys are going to have benefit in, focusing on that, and some people aren't. And so I think, like I said, just learning how to let go of that, things that add extra weight to my performance.
Yeah. What was, other than facing maybe Justin Verlander, like what were the moments in your pro career so far that have been like, dude, I'm really here. Like this is like a pinch myself kind of moment.
Yeah, playing at Fenway and Yankee Stadium were two really cool moments. Hitting a home run at Fenway was really cool. Like that first time I played at Yankee Stadium, and we had been there on like a family trip to New York. It was me, my dad, my brothers, and my sister going into high school, and we went to a game at that stadium, and then having my dad watch me play at that stadium was like a cool, like holy cow, like like kind of like a we made it moment, like we did it, like how cool is this?
Yeah. Your dad loves talking about you though. I literally see him every Thursday.
Yeah, he's like been such a great support, him and my mom, and neither of them are overbearing. And I'm so fortunate by that. Like I'm not, I still know guys who get texts from their parents after a bad game, in the big leagues.
Crazy.
And you're just like, I'm just very grateful that my parents are the biggest supporters, but they don't, they can go a week without talking to me, or they're not going to overstep, and they let me come to them, when I talk to them more than once a week, but, they're not, and it doesn't have to always be about baseball, and so I'm very grateful for their support.
Yeah. And this is going to be your first season married,
right?
I mean, like, talk about that level of support, too.
Yeah, she's been, Emma's been, really, made all the big sacrifices. She's the one that has to come travel to me. She's, adjusting to my schedule when I come back home and, opening things up and stuff like that. And so, I'm super excited for that. And, just to have more pieces of home with you, it just kind of gets me outside of myself, like, and not just in my own routine or my own like focus of like, how did I play today? It's like, go back home and be a husband, and so I'm really excited for that. It's gonna be huge.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Whole new era.
Yeah,
husband era.
yeah, I'm really excited.
We're excited for you, dude.
Yeah,
we're excited to see little Kyle's running around. And we're definitely having him play football.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, bro. Class of 2041. My son needs a quarterback. So
there you go.
Let's figure that out.
Kyle, man, where can people keep up with you on social media?
Yeah, I don't use it too much. I actually, when I go on Instagram, I just go on Safari. And so I'll download the app to post every now and then, but at KJ Stowers3, you're not going to get too much from me. And then Twitter's at Kyle Stowers, but yeah, I try
you just stay off of it, just a distraction for you, or?
Yeah, for me, I realized that it became something that took up idle time, and like I used it just to do it, and it became not productive. So I think there's so many things that social media can be used for good.
Yeah.
Staying connected with friends, keeping in touch with people. But like I feel like I find myself just scrolling too much sometimes. So I just tried to eliminate that and get rid of some idle time.
Yeah. What have you replaced it with?
Like during the season, I'd say it's TV shows.
Yeah.
Once the fall hits, or the later part of the summer, fantasy football.
Okay, there we
during
go.
the season, it's just other things.
Yeah, I know about that league that you're in. I know about that one.
Are you in that one?
No, I'm not.
With the high school guys.
With B Hess.
Yeah.
I think Ethan's in there.
Yep.
I'm curious, what's the comfort TV show?
Comfort right now, it's New Girl.
Really?
Love it.
Yeah. High school, college, it was Friends. Right now, it's a New Girl. Parks and Rec is a great one. Pretty much all the sitcoms.
Not an Office guy?
Not.
Wow. Hot take.
Never was able to get into it.
Yeah,
one of the few.
You gotta at least get to the second season.
Well, I feel like you're either a Parks and Rec guy or you're an Office guy.
Oh, that's not true. Parks and Rec is a great show. I've watched it multiple times.
But The Office is clearly better.
Well, I'm not saying listen, I didn't say that. The Office obviously is better, but I'm saying Parks and Rec. I like Parks and Rec as well.
Well, we need to let Kyle.
Listen, bro, I'm cultured. What are you trying to say?
He's still getting over hit in the face. He just has The Office. That's it.
Come on, bro. He was our friends in college, but it had nothing to do with him picking up baseball.
Fair enough. Kyle, dude, super appreciate you coming out, man. It's always great connecting with you and seeing how well you're doing, man. Obviously, like, we're a couple years older than you, but it's been just awesome to see your progress and see how grounded you still are and just mature, man. So we're super excited for you, bro. Excited for what's coming for you. And, dude, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. Like I said, I always looked up to you guys in high school, so it's really fun doing this.
Yeah. All right, man.
Appreciate you.